What's up guys, it's Chris from Drone Geek Lancaster here today with a tutorial video for you. I'm not the most mechanically savvy person in the world, but this one's pretty easy and I think that you can handle it if you're interested in doing the same thing. But let me give you a little backstory first. So back in November, I bought a Mavic 2 Zoom and I really love the drone. The camera's great and that mechanical zoom feature, fantastic. It really comes in handy. It gets you some really cool, interesting shots, and it helps you get closer to your subject without actually getting closer to your subject. So if you're filming animals or wildlife and you don't want to disturb them with the sound of your drone, it's a great way to do that without disrupting them and sending them off running anyway. So there are a lot of good applications for this is what I'm trying to say. But the one thing that I've really found is that it's lacking in the photo department. When I take photos, they're really good, and I've definitely made up on the back end on learning how to edit my photos to make them pop and make them look even better than they do in the raw. But even that doesn't really help in getting it to the next level. So I've always really wanted the Mavic 2 Pro just so I could get that next level photo out of my drone. But why would I want to spend an extra $1,400 on a brand new drone that is identical to this one minus the camera? It's silly to me, especially since my warranty on this ran out a month ago. DJI can't really punish me for working on my drone anymore by myself because they have nothing to hold against me. They can't say, well, we're not going to honor the warranty if you work on your drone and we find out about it. So in that regard, if I send this in for repair or just to be looked at or to be once over, they're going to charge me full price anyway. So I might as well save money where I can and get the most bang for my buck out of this aircraft. That brings me to my point today. We are going to be making a swap from a Mavic 2 Zoom to a Mavic 2 Pro. I bought this OEM Hasselblad camera and it is the Cadillac of cameras for a prosumer drone like the Mavic 2. It's going to definitely up my photo game, it's going to help me out a lot in that department, and it's going to give me a broader depth of colors to work with, even on the video side of things. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to be able to fly with this camera, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Let's make the swap from Mavic 2 Zoom to Mavic 2 Pro. So to make the transition from the Mavic 2 Zoom to the Mavic 2 Pro, we are going to need some tools as well as some equipment for obvious reasons. First, we have a 1.5 size Allen wrench. This is going to be crucial to removing the screws from the fuselage of the drone. They all require an Allen wrench, so you're going to want to make sure you keep this handy. 1.5 in size worked great for me. I had no issues with the fit. Next, you're going to need something small and flat to help pry the ribbon cable connector off of the motherboard of the Mavic 2. Make sure you're careful when you're using metal objects to help pry that off because you could scratch the motherboard and cause some irreversible damage. You need the Mavic 2 Zoom, and you need the Mavic 2 Pro gimbal assembly with the Hasselblad camera. Here's the ribbon cable we'll be attaching to the motherboard, and we're just gonna set that aside for now. So we're gonna pick the drone up, we're gonna flip it over, and we're gonna fold the bottom legs, or the back legs rather, back to keep them out of the way. Our first step here is gonna be using this Allen wrench to actually remove the bottom plate from the drone. Just gonna take our time here, make sure we get these screws pulled out, and make sure you're very careful with these tiny little screws. You don't wanna have to find these if they fall off of the surface you're working on. And right there, so you wanna be careful because these can fall away. And then that's a real mess for you if you can't find them, because finding screws this small, not necessarily easy when it comes to aircraft, because you need to have that perfect fit, that perfect weight. Otherwise, you could have some issues while flying. So we'll get this next screw removed. Slow and steady wins the race. Very carefully remove it here and put it with its brother. Now, we're gonna remove this bottom plate. First, we're gonna push forward on it. Feel a snap, there it is. And then you're gonna pull the flaps outward from the drone. Now be careful, you'll see here in a moment that there are little pegs that hold this in place. You don't wanna break these because then you'll have to buy a brand new bottom piece unless you are really good with super glue. And you'll see there are the bottom pegs that I was talking about. Just be very careful with those when removing this plate. You don't wanna have to replace this. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this aside, and we're gonna put it with the screws, keep them all together because then you know which screws go with that plate. And unlike I'm doing here, be very careful with the drone because I almost knocked the screws off the table. Next step is we're gonna be removing the screws off of the front of the gimbal assembly. These are just located here in front of the gimbal, And I'm gonna do my best actually to go ahead and remove these looking away from me. So just bear with me as I take a little bit longer here. Again, just taking our time, unscrewing things, being very, very careful not to knock that gimbal around too much. And here we go. There's, whoa, yep, see, that's why you're careful with the screws. They could fly away at any moment. They're very slippery, especially when you don't need them to be slippery. So again, be very careful when you're unscrewing near the gimbal here. If you knock it around too much, you could cause some damage that could make it hard to use in the future, or you might have to replace it before you can use it. Those gimbal motors are very fragile. So now that we've got those screws removed, what we're gonna do now is move to the final 2 screws in the gimbal assembly, which are located right here at the top of the gimbal, and this will help us lift it up out of the actual aircraft. So let's go ahead and get started on this. As you can see here, it is sort of hard to maneuver in these very tight little spaces, and that's why you just want to be very careful and take your time when removing these screws. I did have a couple of instances on my dry run where the screws actually fell into the body of the drone, and you just want to be very, very careful with that because if they get lost in there, or if they knock things around a little too much, or possibly even scratch something, you could have some real issues with the motherboard operating efficiently in the future, or at all really. So just be very, very careful. And again, I always like to sort my screws while I'm going, keep all of the screws that come from certain areas of the drone together. This makes things a little bit easier to put them back together, but also keeps everything in order as well, so that you're not putting screws in the wrong places. So now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna gently lift the gimbal out of the aircraft. We are just one step away now. Now we have to remove this ribbon cable right here. You'll see that it connects to the actual gimbal assembly to the motherboard. So you just want to be very careful when you lift this up, because there are pins on the inside of the ribbon cable. If you bend those, you're in for a bad time. It's time to replace the ribbon cable. So that's why I like to use this little tool to pry it up. Again, it is metal, so just be very careful if you use a metal object as well, not to scratch anything while you're in there. So we've gone ahead and we've removed the ribbon cable. The Mavic 2 Zoom is no more. We're gonna take this gimbal, we're gonna put it aside because we are done with it now. So it's been nice knowing you, Mavic 2 Zoom, but it is time for a new era, and we're gonna be swapping you out for the Mavic 2 Pro, the Hasselblad camera. So let's go ahead and get this gimbal installed. So the most important thing to remember is that we're going to be following the directions we just took to remove the Zoom gimbal backwards to install the Pro gimbal. So it's pretty straightforward. We're going to use the ribbon cable here to go ahead and attach it to the motherboard. And remember, the connectors on the ribbon cable are very, very sensitive, and they're very fragile. So we want to make sure that we get this right the first time. We don't want to jam anything in there. We don't want to force anything down. Let's just make sure that everything goes very smoothly in. So we'll go ahead and connect the ribbon cable first. Again, you're going to feel that click when that goes in, just as you felt the click when it pulled out. So let's get that connected. Okay, we're in. So now what we have to do is we just have to lay the gimbal down, and we're going to tuck this ribbon cable behind the gimbal just like this. And then we will lay the gimbal in, and everything should line up. All the holes for all the different screws that we removed should line up at this point. And once they do, it is as simple as just screwing everything back in the reverse order, which we did it when we took the last gimbal out. So let's go ahead, we'll get started with these 2 little screws. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fast forward through all of this because you've already seen this before, so I will talk to you when it's time to test the new gimbal out. Okay, so we didn't actually fast forward, but we did skip ahead. It's time now to test out the gimbal, make sure everything works. First step is to pull all of the arms out like we would when we're going to fly the drone. So we'll get these all extended out. The reason we're doing this is because the motors do flicker and twitch and rotate when we turn the drone on, and we don't want those to grind up against a flat surface and wear the motors out or damage the motors. So now we're going to get the DJI Go 4 app opened up. This is what the Mavic 2 uses to interface during flight, as well as a few of their other newer drones. So get this pulled up, just 1 second. Okay. All right, so that's ready to go. This works. Okay. So now we're gonna turn the drone on. You'll see here that the drone is now calibrating the gimbal. So we know that there's power to the gimbal. So that was successful, that's good. Now let's turn the controller on, get a connection here. and we're gonna actually want to fold the controller out. I'm gonna take any phone cases off of your phone. There are some phones that the case might fit in the actual controller. Most phones won't. My phone's a little bit bigger, so we are gonna take the case off, and we're gonna take the thumb screws out. Those don't need to be attached necessarily because we're not gonna be flying this. So I'm gonna put these aside so they don't get knocked off the table. We're gonna plug the phone in to the controller. You'll feel that cable go in to the side when it's connected. And you'll see here the app says Go Fly, so we're ready to go. Click on that. And we're in the camera view. So everything works. Let's get out of this menu. Let's click OK. Everything works. You can see here that you can see that the camera's working, and it seems like all of the dials on the controller are responsive. Let's just check on, oh, there you go. So we can pan up and down with the camera. You can see that action going on with the camera as well as on the viewfinder from my phone. So it looks like everything is good. Yep, you can see there's the movement. Okay, yeah, and I don't know if you knew this, but with Mavic 2s, Zooms and Pros, if you click and hold on the screen, you can actually move the gimbal independent from the aircraft. This causes some problems when it comes to lining up the camera with the direction of the aircraft, making sure the orientation is consistent, but overall this is pretty handy. It does move pretty smoothly, so just keep that in mind next time you're out flying if you have a Mavic 2. Now, what I want to talk about is the difference between the Mavic 2 Zoom and the Mavic 2 Pro as it relates to the camera and its features, because you have a dial for the Mavic 2 Zoom on the right-hand side of the controller that normally, when you would rotate it, would actually control the zoom function of the Mavic 2 Zoom, but for the Mavic 2 Pro, there is no zoom feature on the actual camera, so instead, this dial controls the aperture. You can independently control the aperture on the camera. It's great for photos and videos alike. Well, there you have it. That wasn't too hard. We went from a Mavic 2 Zoom to a Mavic 2 Pro in just over 10 minutes. And I was going a little bit slow just because my hands aren't the steadiest sometimes, and those little screws can be very hard to handle, as you saw there a few times. But really, this only takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And if it means the difference between buying another identical aircraft with a different camera for $1,400 or spending what I paid about $500 for the Hasselblad camera, you're gonna save $900 or more, or just in that ballpark anyway, just by being able to work on your own drone. Now, I don't recommend this for people that have DJI drones that also still have a warranty on their drone. If you still have a warranty on your drone, don't work on it. You're only gonna make things harder for yourself moving forward. DJI is a real stickler about people working on their drones, especially when they're clearly able to tell that you did something to modify or repair the drone on your own. If I sent this in for repair, they would see that the serial number is for a Zoom, not a Pro, and that would be a huge red flag. But again, I don't have a warranty, not something I need to worry about. Just be patient. If you have your warranty, let it run out, enjoy the drone that you have, and then once it runs out and it truly becomes your problem, that's when you go ahead and you take your creative liberties and you just sort of do whatever you want with it. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. I know that when I got online looking for answers on how to make this swap when I was ready to do it, videos were the best way to do it. So I hope that my video helped you as much as the videos that I watched online helped me understand how to make that swap. If you did like this video, just take a minute, hit that like button. It really helps me out, and if you want to take it even a step further, help me out on my quest to 1,000 subscribers. Just hit the subscribe button, you're set. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it helps me out tremendously, probably more than you'll even ever know. If you'd like to stay up to date with every time I post a video, as soon as I post the video, make sure you hit the bell icon right next to the subscribe button. It'll send you a notification every time I post a new video, no matter what the content is. It's a great way to stay in touch, especially if you really, really like my content. And again, I appreciate it when people get notifications, because notifications equals views, and views help me out a lot. This is Chris with Drone Geek Lancaster. Have a nice day.